Hi everybody, I'm David Wagner, President of the Victorian Chapter, and welcome you to today's lead-in session on the Sustainability Questionnaire. First, in the spirit of reconciliation, the Institute of Architects acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout this land, which we now call Australia, and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So today's lean-in session is the first in a series that the Victorian Chapter are organising that focus on the technical aspects of sustainability and how we can enhance our practice to contribute to the urgent need for a sustainable world. These monthly lean-in sessions are free to members across Australia, and I encourage you all to register, and together we'll raise ESD knowledge and practice across our profession. Future lean-ins will include going carbon neutral on 14th of February and calculation of a building's embodied carbon and operational carbon in March and April. Today, I'm delighted to say that we have with us the co-authors of the Sustainability Questionnaire, which has now become a mandatory part of the National Awards Program. Jamila Jahangiri, and Director of Studio Orsi, and Gabrielle Pelletier, Associate Director of Sam Crawford Architects, are both practicing architects in New South Wales and have significant experience in this, and have developed the Sustainability Questionnaire, which will form part of the National Awards Program. The new checklist forms part of the Institute's larger sustainability agenda and will assist in recognising innovation and leadership in the sustainability category. It will help jurors assess the sustainability of all projects, but should not be viewed as a disqualifying or a bar to entry into the direct entry categories. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and I ask that questions are submitted in a respectful manner. The meeting will be recorded and put to YouTube for later viewing. So with that introduction, I pass you over to Jamila and Gabrielle. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Just put up the slides. Thank you. Before we start, I also want to acknowledge the many countries that we are all in today. I personally am at Gadigal lands of Eora Nation, and I pay my respect to the past, present, and emerging. Next. The twin crisis of climate breakdown and biodiversity loss are the most serious issue of our time. By today, 1,123 architectural firms around the country declared climate and biodiversity emergency. Next. Globally, building and construction play a major part, according to accounting for nearly 40% of energy-related carbon dioxide emissions, whilst also having a significant impact on our natural habitats. Meeting the needs of our communities and staying within our ecological limits will require a shift in our behaviour, as well as the design, delivery and performance of our buildings. Considering one step towards the change, at New South Wales Sustainability Working Group, in collaboration with the New South Wales Awards Working Group, we started to investigate pathways towards sustainability. Next. With a deep research into current steps currently in place at the American Institute of Architects and RIBA Awards, we aim to create a pathway towards including sustainability as a major part in current AIA award system. Comparing the current Australian Institute of Architects Sustainability Pathway and Awards, we created and proposed a roadmap towards 2030. Next, please. While it's not fully confirmed nationally, we are hoping that this will be a roadmap towards 2030. The questionnaire proposed is only the first step towards Net Zero 2030 roadmap, and is to assist all 2023 award jurors in assessing the sustainability credential of application as one of the 8 core evaluation criteria of all awards category. This checklist will also determine the project's eligibility for the sustainability awards. Supporting information is required both to proceed with nomination to the Sustainability Awards and also to assist the jurors in evaluating your sustainability credential when assessing the awards category for which you have submitted your project. Next, please. Gab will go through each of the requirements in details, but the main group of criteria that the questionnaire will cover include protection of land and ecological system. We also looked at seating and urban design, energy efficiency and consumption of the projects that you're proposing, selection of the buildings, materials and process, and also social issues surrounding the project. You could select yes, no, or not applicable from the drop down list that is provided, and nomination required yes answers to a minimum number of the questions in all categories. And next, Gab, if you need any additional assistance with any of the categories, feel free to look to the Architect Declare website resource section to get many ideas and information. From here, I hand to Gab to explain how to use the checklist. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So we also included this as the Institute did sign up to the Architects Declare movement. And as you know, there's a lot of different aims associated with that, one of which is to hopefully try to achieve some carbon neutrality by 2030 for projects / all projects. And what you'll see with our checklist or our questionnaire is about trying to set minimum benchmarks for all projects that aren't yet compulsory, as mentioned, for submission to the awards, but to sort of guide the industry and in leadership towards sustainability, towards some of these timelines and targets. Now, I'll run through this in detail. We have received, as you know, as I'm sure a lot of you have emailed, a number of questions at national level. So I will try to address the ones that I know about at the moment. And then, as David said, we'll do a Q&A session later. So the purpose of the checklist, as mentioned, the core purpose is actually to provide background sustainability data to every single award juror, as sustainability is one of the 8 core evaluation criteria for all awards. The other main purpose, as you're very aware, is to determine your eligibility to then move on to the sustainability award. In previous years, as you know, that was an extra little tick box, and then you had a separate checklist / questionnaire that you had to fill in as part of submitting for that award. Now, New South Wales chapter last year actually adopted that checklist and made it as a compulsory form that needed to be filled in for any submission similar to this. However, we didn't, we still had it as a self-nomination into the Sustainability Award. And part of the thinking here is that the understanding or benchmarking of what is a good sustainability project across all categories and project types is really not well understood. You know, like, yes, you've got Green Star in some sectors of the environment, some sectors of the architectural industry, and other sorts of certifications. But to be able to try to assess everything and to help elevate some firms that may be doing such an amazing job but don't actually realize it, as well as maybe send a message to others that aren't necessarily meeting the benchmarks, and to give you guys a bit of a guide on where you might want to work towards in the future. So but I will reiterate, it's not, you don't need to achieve all the eligibility criteria to be assessed positively or favorably in all of the normal other categories that you're submitting for. It's only one of the 8 criteria for evaluation. So how to use the checklist. As Jamila said, some of this came as a result of feedback from the previous checklist. So trying to make it a little bit easier. I know there is still a lot of data you've got to put in, but the aim is that you only, that you've got yes, no, and not applicable. And that only for yes answers do you need to provide additional information, not for no and NA. I know you want to probably send in information trying to say, oh, we haven't done this for all of these reasons, but really at the end of the day, the things that matter are the things that you have been able to do. Now, I will go through, I'll get to that in a second. The supporting information, we aim to have 500 words for each topic. You can combine, like some of the answers might be repetitive. So that's why we've given one big answer space, so that you might just do one blurb that covers all of the items, or you might want to answer individually under little subheadings for each item. It's sort of up to you how you want to progress your answers here. We do hope that additional data is provided, because part of some criticisms in the past about the sustainability checklist process is that there's not an ability to prove that you're doing these certain things. So we're hoping that this facilitates a little bit more information. The award eligibility. So as you know, you change your answer to yes, no, not applicable, and there is a minimum number that you need to meet. Now, I realize that when you click on the no at the top, you get the formula, and there's been a lot of people trying to work out how many of those questions and which ones are included, which ones aren't. I will run through that with you now, just to be totally clear and transparent on that. Not all of the no questions, not all of the questions, if you answer NA, contribute to a no. Some of them do actually contribute to a yes, because we understand that certain things are very related to either a particular certification system or a particular climate zone, and we're dealing with a very, very big country here. We know that it's difficult, and it's not necessarily fair yet, because as you understand, as we've included in the latest revision, interior design projects and small projects, whilst it might be impossible for them to meet all eligibility, still need to meet all of the minimum 6 categories this year. How this will evolve next year, it's a continuing evolving process, so it will change. Now I'll go through each of these subsections. So general, we've got 2 out of 3 to achieve eligibility here, 2 out of 3 yes answers. The kind of main point here is that it's felt that that 2 of these are probably easier to answer. 1 of them's probably harder. So it's trying to be at the upper end of being sustainable, but not saying everybody needs a sustainability action plan, because we understand that small firms in particular, there's a lot of resources to have to commit to be able to create one of those. And also a lot of people might be in the middle of creating it, but don't have it quite yet. Protection of land and ecological systems. Now we've gone for 5 out of 6 here. These are all, a lot of them are fairly standard in the way that local councils or state public bodies want you to address sustainability on site. It's often embedded in other systems. So that's why we've been a little bit more stringent on this item. We're wanting people to really be demonstrating true excellence here to be able to move forward. 6 out of 7 again. But I want to note that this last one about considerations towards facilitation of pedestrian and non-motorised transport has been included as a NA equals yes. So it's sort of, I guess, 5 out of 6 in a sense, if you aren't able, if that's not applicable to your project. On the energy efficiency and consumption, we've been a little bit less stringent, because we know that to achieve a lot of these, so it's very client driven. Obviously, it's also quite difficult to undertake all of the modeling involved. So it's only 7 out of 10. The question around air tightness, because that's obviously quite closely aligned to passive house, but also it might be very aligned to your climate zone. Having a very tightly sealed house might not be that beneficial where you are building. So we've put that as an NA equals yes, no equals no. And then the blue ones here are not included in the assessment. So understanding that whether or not you've got heating or cooling actually might, a yes and a no, like depending upon those, might actually, a no might be a positive thing in this sense. Now I'll use this one also to talk about the fact that we've got additional locations saying type answer here. Typically we've included that only where it's a short technical, analytical, numbers-based answer. And part of the aim that we're hoping for here is a bit of an assessment that can be done at the end of the process by National Council to work out where the country sits in this sustainability process, and to be able to determine whether or not, how we evolve this questionnaire in the future by looking at some of those answers. So by putting them in the spreadsheet in this manner, it's easy to pull that data out. The rest of your answer for those questions should be going into the larger supporting information space. And in some instances, I think there was one around insulation. If that answer is a really long form answer and it's easier to put it in the main area, put it in the main area. Selection of building materials and processes. So this one is 5 out of 7. And the total amount of embodied carbon in a project is not a yes/no answer, so therefore it's excluded from the total as well. 6 out of, so I should also say that the process of looking at the eligibility will be done by National Council. They will download all of these checklists separately. They will look through and see who's meeting the 6 out of 6 eligibility criteria. They will then get put into a pool separately for the sustainability jury, but then each other jury has access to the checklist, the questionnaires, I should say, for their particular category. The social issues, I should say that also here the aim of this checklist is looking at sustainability in a really holistic manner. We're trying not to have it all based on just energy or just building materials, but really our impact on the broader city, the broader town, the broader environment, as well as the society at large. So I know that a number of these are going to be quite tricky for smaller projects or residential projects, but we felt in particular the question around contributing to the local community in terms of economy, education, training, transport is very specific to the project typology. And so that one also is excluded from the, well, it's an NA equals a yes in the formula. I think that's it. I've rushed through it pretty quickly there.
So Gabrielle, is that have you got more to say on that at all, or do you want to go to questions?
I don't think so. Like, I didn't obviously go through each one of these points. So if people have specific questions, throw them at me. But
sure. Well, look, I think the first question that came up, which is, I think we can probably answer quite quickly, is these numbers that you provided, the 5 out of 7 and so forth, is in relation to the sustainability award, not specifically to do with any of the direct entry. So it's sort of interest for direct entry, and the jurors will look at it, but it's not actually one of the criteria for those direct entry categories.
No, and whether or not it goes green and says eligibility, like eligible, yes, that's not that won't be assessed by the jury. Only your supporting information and whether or not you've integrated these items will be assessed by each other category.
Okay. In general, also it helps with the future and the development of this pathway if we get all the questions answered, regardless of if it's been included in the category or not.
Okay. We have another question to do with kilowatts. What if we have actual kilowatts, which in our case is less than the estimated NATHERS value? I think this is obviously for the calculation questions in the questionnaire.
So I'm not sure what the question was. Can you say that again, David?
Sure. What if we have actual kilowatts, which in our case is less than the estimated NATHERS value? So I think that's in reference to the we have two calculation questions here, don't we?
I think I'm not quite sure what you mean, but I think if you have your estimate and if it differs from one of the systems used, perhaps just include a little bit more explanation in your supporting information if you think that it's going to be misassessed by the jury.
Okay. Another question, is there any section for infrastructure and urban design projects? I mean, that might be a question which we can actually expand to look at. I mean, obviously, every building type is in a particular category of building, and these questions are trying to cover all buildings, which is obviously
It is.
a challenge to try and get the questionnaire to work for all of those. But this issue was about urban designs. How should that be considered?
I think the questions try to consider also urban design projects as well. So I think particularly section 2 and section 6 from memory, I think has a lot of items, but then obviously other questions are trying to be generic, so it captures a lot of information from different categories.
Yes, there is an element to all urban projects that's material based and energy based, even if it's a proposal for a future urban project, or it's embedded in the theory of it, you can still answer it related to that. As David said, this is one questionnaire for every single category of project typology.
Next question. If you entered the awards system last year and received a sustainability commendation for the local award for that project, can you re-enter just specifically for a sustainability award this year?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
So the only way that you can do it is through category or type of project that you have. And then you can submit this data. And if you're meeting all of the eligibility points, so you receive a yes in every single category, then you will be automatically transferred into that sustainability award assessment process.
So the questionnaire is working at a couple of levels. It's working at the level of informing the jury about sustainability aspects of a project.
Yep.
But then if it actually reaches a certain level, and you've mentioned the numbers there that they've got to try and get to, that only then can it make it into the sustainability award.
Correct. And so in the past, you would have probably, I think, put in, say if you had a houses new and then you also wanted sustainability award, you pay sort of 2 entry fees. In this case, we're actually only doing the one. So you're only submitting it via the houses new, and it will automatically go forward into the sustainability category if it meets all of those credentials.
Okay. There's a question here, if we had an LCA, do we provide the whole report? So I suppose there's a note on the questionnaire that we can submit up to 10 megabytes of supporting information. How much information are you anticipating should be provided? I mean, I suppose the jurors are going to look at other aspects of a project. So how much more information are you anticipating should be submitted?
I wouldn't anticipate that a full report is required. I think having say the conclusions element of the report, or if you cover off sort of, the main findings that are often in the introduction or at the end, perhaps include those elements of the report. That would be the best course of action, because there may be quite a lot of projects hopefully there'll be a lot of projects for the jury to go through, and it's a lot of text for them to read.
I think also good to notice that at the end of the day, it's your choice. This is just the questionnaire, and it's going to categorize you based on the greens and then send you to the sustainability awards. And if you think that document is going to help you with the awards, by all means, please put it in the information that you put for the awards.
Yeah, so I suppose it's like any application for an award, is you're putting forward the key points, because obviously with all juries, they can only assess so much information, and then I suppose they can dig down and get some more information if that's necessary. But in the first instance, is getting those key points across so that the jurors can capture those and decide whether it's sustainability award.
I think the supporting information in the additional information submission that we anticipate are more things like certificates, or potentially a bill, or a readout from your battery, like input output of power data. Like it might be if you want to include some imagery attached to it that you can't include in the Excel spreadsheet, that sort of information. But you should try to think in a manner of communicating to the jury. What are they going to want to read and see?
Yep. Next question we have is, have you tested the questionnaire on some of the previous winners of Sustainability Prize, bearing in mind that the previous example of the Sustainability Questionnaire was in New South Wales alone, where you've actually been through the whole process with an earlier version?
Well, this questionnaire actually wasn't the questionnaire that we had last year in New South Wales. The New South Wales questionnaire was a different one. This one is based on a number of different groups that have contributed information, as well as from the assessment criteria that the sustainability juries nationwide utilised. So it included a little bit more of a holistic background. It's been tested on projects by the people who helped make the questionnaire, but not on past winners, because if we've not necessarily been the past winner, it's difficult to be able to fill that data in.
Okay, the next question we have is, if we as the architects aren't able to find any information to answer certain questions, for example, operational performance, is the appropriate response in this case NA? And I suppose we're at a stage in our ESD development where there's still information is being gathered and the field is moving very fast in terms of trying to understand carbon and body energy and so forth. So how would you see that, Jamila or Gabrielle?
Generally speaking, we think that the information that's being asked for is reasonably available, should be reasonably available. We understand some clients are difficult and you may not be able to gain that data. We have removed a lot of the questions that are about post-occupational studies. I know that, for instance, in the RIBA, you're not actually allowed to submit awards now until after the building's been occupied for a minimum of a year, and that post-occupational data has to be collected and submitted. So, I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that we move towards in the future. If you cannot get that answer, I think that your response should be no or NA.
Okay, good, thank you. The next question, first part of the question is yes, no. Has WLA or LCA been completed? But then asks the second question, if not, does a positive response to second part consideration of allow a yes answer, even if a formal definitive WLA or LCA has not been completed? I'm not quite sure. Does that make sense to you?
It does. So basically, whether or not your project is carbon neutral or carbon negative relies upon you having undertaken a WLA or LCA. And if you've not undertaken that process, you can't know that if your project is negative or neutral, but it's very, very unlikely it will be negative or neutral without undertaking that process. So yes, you are penalised twice if you have not done an LCA or WLA, and you've also therefore not achieved neutrality or negativity. If you've not undertaken one of those assessment processes, but you are able to prove that you've achieved carbon neutrality or negative or a carbon negative outcome, then please say yes in that instance, and then submit your evidence.
Okay, and I should say that was question 4.1. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, 4.1 and 4.2,
yeah.
sorry, of part 4, selection of building materials and processes. And I think I've answered a question previously, that the question on whole life assessment and LCA assessment, look, I know that at the moment, the software that is around that is often expensive and highly paid for. At the moment, there are free versions that you can use that aren't that detailed, but do still help you head towards that end. Also, it is prior to these software, it is a desktop process. So if you have undertaken a desktop analysis rather than doing it through software, that's also something that you can include.
And I also wanted to add that this is obviously not a compulsory for all the categories and just for sustainability. So if you are hoping to enter for sustainability, quite likely you'll done this. So this is very generic. And the reason that we're putting this now, we're hoping that in the future, again, we make this compulsory. And then by that time, we give everyone enough time to do this research for all the future projects. So it might be a good questionnaire to kind of put aside, and then when you are doing future projects, do it that way. So in the future, similar to RIBA and American Institute of Architects, we make this compulsory to enter to any categories.
Yeah, I think our hopes and dreams for the future is that there's no need for a sustainability award, but every single category is a demonstration of achieving the best in sustainability, because it's just one of many aspects of good architecture. But, you know, anyway, that's hopes and dreams.
Yeah, well, I think also it's fair to say, Gabrielle and Jamila, you've done a great job in terms of actually setting up a document that actually is making everybody very aware of all these sort of diverse parameters that we really need to sort of make sure are part of the equation for projects we're working on now, as opposed to projects that were designed a few years back, that it is a moving exercise, but this has been fantastic in that respect. So the next question we have is, with regards to the LCA, if an assessment has been produced in full but not certified, there is a high dollar value for the certificate via e-tool. Will it be accepted and assessed in the same manner as one with an independent certificate?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
You know, I think the certification process is great, and hopefully in the future that becomes a lot more cost effective. But we understand the limitations on scale of project, scale of client, scale of architecture firm, and we do not want you to be penalised for the fact that that costs additional.
We try to have the questions in a way that's generic again, so it doesn't require information that certifiers, available certifiers require, or nor requires uploading any form of certifications. Okay,
good, thank you. The next question we have is, could you please elaborate on question 5.4 and what sort of supporting evidence would assist? Now, 5.4, for those watching, is there a strategy in place to prevent as much as possible the promulgation of modern slavery?
So
I talked about this.
This is we've talked about this one before too. I think a lot of firms actually have policy around this, and so including your office policy can be useful. The other thing that can be useful is to talk through the resources that you've utilized to be able to research the products that you've used around supply chain and the embedment of modern slavery within that. There are a lot of online resources for that, and a lot of products that have met the international benchmarks on this, particularly now that we have the Act in Australia to prevent promulgation of modern slavery, that is quite readily available. Plus, a lot of construction companies are also very much embedded in this process. So I encourage you to not just include the design elements, but the whole of project elements associated with modern slavery, because there is a lot of information available.
Great. Thank you very much, Gabrielle. The next question we have is, the internal GFA, gross floor area, calculates for all internal floor area or just the footprint of the building? If I have a project that is 3 levels, then the total of GFA will be the internal area for all 3 levels. Also, is balcony and roof deck included in the GFA?
I believe that the gross internal floor area that it's seeking is internal only, inside the face of your external walls, or inside face of a party wall if your project shares party walls. So I would not be including balcony space. Again, it is up to you. If you think that so much of your project is outside of an envelope, and that's what is really powerful about your project, and you'd like to include that area, then by all means include it. But the idea is to include only the enclosed built area.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Does that mean a house project could be up against urban master plan and sustainability category, or does each of the categories also have a sustainability prize? The suggestions from Jane Toner was that the latter would make more sense to her.
I think the sustainability awards has always been a mixed category. So when you are getting eligible for sustainability, it's always been that then you compare between all the categories that were eligible nationally. So that's, nothing's changed in that part.
Okay.
No, and the strengths of your project will vary depending upon this type of project. But a holistic approach to sustainability should be fairly similar across all projects.
Good, thank you. Next question. For heritage projects, particularly conservation projects, can we discuss existing building site qualities to support a yes?
Absolutely.
Checklist item.
100%. I encourage that. I encourage that for interior projects too, if that is pertinent to your project and around decisions behind why certain sites were used for the project as a whole. It is trying to say that it's a lot more than just your immediate design element, that you have you're taking on quite a big and important role in not just a single project, but in a community and a city. And so it's shifting thinking.
And I think also other questions are going to give you advantage points, because then in those questions, a new build might not get as easy positive as yours that keep the building and done adaptive reuse or etc.
Yeah, so it should be underlined. Obviously, it's not just heritage, but just reuse of existing buildings and retrofit of existing buildings is something that must be encouraged with this sort of sustainability direction that we're encouraging. So no, I'd say absolutely full support for that. The next question, does question 3.1 refer to the building and its services itself, or does any use of fossil fuels and equipment such as generator or commercial cooker make this a no? So item 3.1 is the building 100% electric? What is the annual estimated energy consumption? Please state whether this estimate was modelled through the Passive House planning package.
So the question is it everything included in the project related to power?
I think there might be a bit of 3.1 and 3.2 when I look at how it's set out. So yeah, the percentage of it being 100% electric is the essence of the question.
Yeah, so I would imagine, was there an example? I would imagine that we are saying that the answer is basically yes, particularly regarding operational energy for the building to function. If there's a specific reason why fossil fuels are required, because it's a chemical engineering building, and so you've got different gases supplied to the site, or an education building that also requires natural gas to your science labs, then perhaps state that. However, generally speaking, in all of those buildings, the way the building operates, running all of the power to the building, the lighting, the air conditioning, we're asking whether or not those elements are 100% electric.
Great. Next question. Will points of eligibility become compulsory in the future with an award submission?
We don't know yet.
We can't answer that question.
I suppose the future is a very intriguing area of interest, and I
hopefully soon.
Yeah, this is very much a developing strategy in terms of how we integrate sustainability into the awards. So this is a first step nationally, and I suppose we'll keep developing this as we go along.
And I can tell you that whatever we do in terms of making things compulsory around eligibility won't be done immediately as this questionnaire has been put in this year. There will be time to plan for it, and there will be a lot of warning. So I hope that this is more of a grounding process for the Institute, for the whole nation, for us to really see where we're all at, and then for us to take a step back, assess, and work out the roadmap for the future.
And we're hoping, just again, not to confirm nationally, but we're hoping by 2030 we are net zero. So
yes, it should be tremendous.
Winning projects are net zero, whatever that may mean.
Sure. The next question we have is, what should we do if we are still waiting certifications, international WL Building Institute certification that isn't assessed, awarded until something after practical completion? Do we nominate the target and say result pending?
Yeah, it's up to you. If you're putting this in before you've reached practical completion, that's a risk in and of itself.
I don't know if you can. I don't
I'm not sure that you can either.
The project has to be complete by the end of the previous year to be submitted.
Yeah.
So that might be a good entry for next year rather than this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine, you know, we sometimes make assessment around whether or not we want a landscape to grow before we submit it for an award. So I assume it would be the same thing around some of those certifications. If you think it would really support your project, maybe wait. But if you really don't want to wait and you really want to submit, then I would put your target in and say that it's pending, but that can't necessarily be assessed in that way. If you've got a result that you've come out with and it's an outcome, you just need it to be audited to check to sign off on it. I think include what the result was that you're submitting for.
Great.
I think that's exactly what was asked. So,
No,
yes,
that's a good answer.
Okay.
So to clarify, next question, we have to complete the sustainability questionnaire even if we don't wish to enter our project for a sustainability award.
And I just want to remind you that if you don't complete it, your project can't be assessed under one of those 8 eligibility core criteria for assessment. So you're really just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yep.
For the rest of the jury to assess you under the category you're submitting for.
Okay, the supplementary part of that question was, and if we don't achieve the minimum, does our award entry become void? I think the advice is that it doesn't become void. It just may not get into the sustainability award. But in terms of the direct entry, it will still be a valid entry in the direct entry. You can still progress along that path.
Correct.
The next question we have is verification of building data to design for sustainability is important. That might be a statement that you might like to comment on.
So what was the
verification data to
verification of building data to design for sustainability is important?
I would say yes, it is. And this is where we're trying to head down the pathway of having an evidence-based assessment system rather than just lip service and well-written text. So I agree
to make it in
with that statement.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
But you know, I think the point is, and the point that we're trying to make, and a few people have raised, is that a lot of the evidence-based systems available are expensive, and so we understand that this is a slower process. But I know that, you know, that there are free ones available. There are free methods to do this. You can do desktop analysis. So I just encourage you to really think about, how can I prove that we've done these things?
And one of the other things we are aware that many projects are entering this year awards and next year have been worked like many years before, and that necessarily means that you didn't have that information at the time, and that's why we're not making it compulsory and trying to give like a pathway that it kind of like works as a index that you see for all the future projects that when happens.
Yeah, and I think no doubt this questionnaire will help members as we progress forward with designs that we're undertaking now, that this is a really great checklist to just review and see where things are at. So the next question we have is for category 3. Please confirm if the minimums achieved points are 7 out of 10 or 7 out of 14. So category 3 was energy efficiency and consumption.
10 questions on
I wrote 10
questions. Yeah,
I wrote 10, but it's actually 7 out of 9. Let me just share the screen again. That was my quick math. That wasn't great. So it's a minimum of 7, but it's out of the ones that are white. So basically 3.1 down to 3.10 minus 3.2, because 3.2 is really just a data entry point. Right.
Okay.
So in other words, just to repeat, just in case you're a latecomer, items 3.11 to 3.14, which are around appliances specifically, aren't included in the assessment there for eligibility.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have, can you show the question that is being discussed on LCA, etc.?
Yes, I can get to that. So that's here. So embodied energy and materials, has a whole of life assessment or a life cycle assessment being completed for this project? If not, please describe how you considered both those elements. List any reclaimed, recycled, recyclable, local and sustainable materials. So do you see that you don't necessarily need to have had one of those things to be able to provide a good amount of information? for
So
assessment.
this is where the written response, the 500-word segment, can be taken advantage of to
Yes.
explain.
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Okay, the next question we have is, based on not doing an LCA or WLA means that section 4 cannot be achieved. I think you probably just answered that in a way. Therefore, no project without this assessment can be considered for sustainability award.
Again, I think Gab already captured this. I think this is a very generic item that if you were willing to submit for sustainability previous years, you would have provided anyway. So it's nothing new, but we understand that projects that weren't thinking to submit for sustainability and just in any other category might not have this. But
and if you
not onerous, I don't think. Yeah. So
and if you've done a desktop sort of analysis on the whole of life assessment on the building, so you've looked at all of the materials getting demolished, everything that's coming in, operational energies, you know, you can include some of the outcomes from that finding, and you can explain your processes in your long form answer. You just may not be able to then answer the second point, which is much more of a sort of an analytical assessment of carbon in, carbon out. So
Right.
my answer is you still probably can achieve compliance, but you can't really be a fully sustainable project without really undertaking a deep analysis of the whole life cycle of the project.
So in essence, you can't numerically demonstrate it, but you can actually answer that you've actually
Yes.
considered these aspects. And I think our next question was very similar along those lines, so I won't bother reading that one out. Next question, can you show the questions as they are being discussed? Okay.
Sorry, I jumped out of this for a couple of the questions, but they're back up now.
Yep. I'm not quite sure what that question means. Next one, it's just that we are in the process of post practical completion assessment. That is, it takes 6 months after completion, and we're in that in between. So I think their question is, they're asking about timing of their award submission, and it sounds like that they should be waiting till they finish their assessment if they feel they have a chance in the sustainability award.
well, or yeah, like it's again, as I think we had a similar question. If you think that it's going to support your project more, maybe into next year, but then also this year, sometimes the numbers work, sometimes it needs more time. Up to you guys, I guess.
And there is, you can enter more than 1 year.
Yes,
You've got
there's no time limit.
Yeah, you can enter in 2 consecutive years. And so just double check your eligibility, make sure you have reached that minimum completion point, and determine whether or not you want to rush for this year's award or next year's.
Yep, I'll wait for the plans to grow. Okay, question 5.7 relates to much broader economic analysis and data, which as architects we do not necessarily have access to. Can you give an example of how to demonstrate economic sustainability without just relying on anecdotal statements? So 5.7, and perhaps I'll just read that out. Does the project demonstrate economic sustainability? For instance, does the project represent a high level of value for the investment of funds without negatively impacting social, environmental, and cultural aspects of the community?
I'd imagine that this for many people will be a value-based statement as opposed to an economic breakdown. Jamila, did you?
Oh, I just wanted to say that
I'm so sorry.
that section 5, it's targeting maybe less in residential and interior projects. But I think at this stage, research that you've done with even the materials that you specified or how the project sits within the greater context that it is, I think it's going to support the documents that you put in.
It's also trying to demonstrate, it's trying to ask you to demonstrate and to be able to award those that have worked hard to make a project cost effective without the cheapness of product being a demonstration of slavery and other environmental impacts. So it's you could probably demonstrate this by talking about what your estimation, maybe there was an early estimation of how much the project was going to cost for what sort of brief that they had, but then you actually managed to keep it within that budget, but provide additional spaces that really supported the wellness or positive outcomes of the project.
Or even like the area of the, like a residential house, like when they started, they wanted a bigger build, but then we kind of managed to reduce the scale of the project.
Yeah, or maybe you looked at some cost-effective prefabrication systems, or yeah, it's really up to you how you want to answer it, but it is, we understand, one that's difficult to provide evidence to, but we just encourage you to think through what you'd want to see as an outcome.
The social issues related to a project that you've done.
Okay, thank you. The next one is actually a compliment rather than a question per se. Comes from Shannon Batterson. As National President, I would like to thank both Gabrielle and Jamila for the incredible work in putting this all together.
Thanks,
and for
Shannon.
the efforts to help all of us on the journey to sustainability in our built environment.
Thanks very much, Shannon.
That's a nice one to get. Now, the next question we have, if appliances not included as an assessment, does it mean 3.1 does not include the appliances?
No, it includes the appliances, but we just considered that some projects might not have the appliances related. That's why.
Yeah, it's not included in the formula for eligibility, but it's included in the assessment of how you've approached appliance selection for the project. So the yes, no, maybe answer isn't going to contribute to whether or not this little title goes green, but what you provide as an answer, and then what you explain further on. Sorry if you can hear building noise in the background here. What you explain in the supporting answers will be part of the broader assessment. The element of the question of 3.10, have efficient fittings, fixtures and equipment been included as part of the project, that is included in the yes, no, maybe portion of the eligibility statement.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. Section 4 cannot achieve a yes unless 4.1 is yes, because 4.2 is dependent upon that, and a yes requires 4 yeses. This does not seem fair to small projects, firms who have not done a whole of life assessment or a LCA. So I think 4.1 we've actually visited previously.
Yes.
I think again, if you refer to 4.1, the second portion of the question, it is still by reviewing the projects, if thought that it needs to be eligible for sustainability, I think you still can achieve it, although you haven't done the calculation. So we think that with a bit of background check, if it was intended to submit for sustainability at this stage, it can achieve it if you think about the second portion of the questions in 4.1.
Again, I just want to reiterate, we haven't said that you need to have done those assessments over software. We've only asked for the calculations related to that further along. So answer it as you wish to demonstrate that you've done the thinking.
And if you look at the, again, I think I put it in the presentation, if you look at the Architects Declare website, there are a lot of resources that helps you to work out the things that you've done that might be unconscious, but you then be eligible.
Yes, we know it's called post-rationalization, but if you have actually done the thinking, you might just be able to include it under the banner of a life cycle assessment. So I've just
I think the reality of a lot of what we do is very positive towards the environment. And I think what we're doing now is learning how to formalize that as well as doing the calculations. So it may not be post-justification, maybe just part of our initial thinking that we're now understanding what exactly that actually meant.
Exactly.
So another compliment, just great to see real progress on discussions that have been happening since last century. So can I compliment both of you on a fantastic presentation? I think what we need to just emphasize is that this is all very much a foundational part of the process, and that you can still enter an award and not be I suppose aspiring towards sustainability as an award, but still actually enter it. So we don't want to discourage anybody from entering. So please still make the submissions, but this is both an assessment of your existing project, but also I think it's a way of educating all of us along the path we need to be going. So it's a really timely, fantastic contribution into the awards, and it's obviously getting out there and talking to everybody. So thanks very much to Jamila and Gabrielle for this. We might bring this to a close at this point. And let me just see. So it's been incredibly helpful, the sustainability questionnaire, indeed sustainability discussion in general. Thanks also to the behind the scenes Institute staff who are very essential in getting this to get up and operating. We depend very heavily upon Joel, Eliza and Daniel for making today's lean-in session possible. The session has been recorded and will be available for review via the Institute's website. So thank you for your attendance today. We'll close the session today. Wherever you are across Australia, we wish everyone well in their award submission and get those awards in. The actual dates vary from state to state, but it's all very, very soon. So all the best and thank you very much for attending. Bye for now.